I've never did a video before lying down on my van. This is a first for me, but this is a great way to talk about this subject because it does get my ire, this subject, quite a bit, and it's really necessary that people who have, in my perception at least anyway, people that have massive followings on YouTube to take full accountability for what they say and therefore make it about themselves if they relate to what they're experiencing rather than what they perceive or believe is coming down the line, and creating a false sense of not even security but a false sense of a projection based upon their own understandings, but their own musings and their own interpretations of information, and then projecting out from that their own understandings, their own tainted, and I say tainted not in a way that's in a negative sense, but in a sense of what they understand and what they've learnt and what they know in regards to what they've been conditioned to believe. And what they, even if they intuitively believe that as well, and I mean believe rather than actually perceive, there's a difference, right? Perception is like you look at your body as a lens, your mind as a lens. Your awareness moves and perceives through the lens of the body, for example, which is, you know, if you follow the work of David Icke and the work he's done lately with the book called The Trap, what he perceives the body to be is a projection of the mind being in the lower fourth dimension. So the mind projects its awareness, your awareness through from the mind in the lower astral, from the fifth dimension where your actual existence really is, where your awareness is. It projects itself through the mind in the lower fourth dimension into the body, the holographic form in the third dimension. So these people who perceive from their perceptions, their beliefs, which revolve around 3D, and they perceive from that place and project out into the world from that place with their enormous followings on YouTube about how a narrative is playing itself out for the global consciousness, for society in general, for the consciousness of the planet and for humanity as such. And when they perceive this through their own lens, and when they project that out into the world saying, you're not going to recognize the world in 18 months, it's going to be so beautiful, positive, amazing, etc., etc. So much consciousness shifting, so much deep awareness arising in people. So much of what we see in regards to the manufactured control system no longer existing, no longer in place. This dystopic technocratic world that we're moving into will no longer be here in 18 months due to the nature of 3I Atlas coming into our solar system, an interstellar object coming into our solar system. Since that's coming into our solar system, they say, due to the nature of where it's coming from, Sagittarius, the Sagittarius constellation in our galaxy, in our galaxy, coming into our solar system from our galaxy. Since this is happening, the nature of what comes next is that this interloper, I'll call it that, this interloping object from the Sagittarius system is going to shift and change reality and our society and our world in a way that we can't recognize, and we won't recognize in 18 months from where it is today, but in a very positive sense. Look, I'm all for that idea, but it's their perception, right? And that's where and when they project it out into the world and say this is exactly what's going to happen, without taking into accountability the fact that, most importantly, people give their power away every day to perceived authority, you know, And there's a lot of people that haven't, like myself, for example, in the last 5 years, who do not give their power away to perceived authority. The only authority I give my power to is the co-creator, first cause, source energy. It's the only authority I will bend a knee to. But I'm part of that, as much as you are watching this video. We're all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. And whether David Icke is correct or not, it's also questions to ask, but it's his perception of how this simulation, this existence, this reality, this level of awareness, this level of existence is, and it's all his perceptions. And if you look at that work and you say, does it actually hold any water for me? Does it make sense to me? Is it real to me? If you look at the world that way, look at reality that way, you are only experiencing something that you're perceiving through your own lens of perception in the 3D world. You might get your intuitive hits coming in from the 5D. I mean, your real awareness is bound, well, it isn't bound. Your real awareness is not bound, but where it's operating from, through the mind of the lower fourth dimension, into the 3D holographic form called the body. You might be getting intuitive hits around the nature of that's what the world looks. It's going to look like in 18 months' time. You might get this perception that we're heading towards this glorious, amazing, unrecognizable world. But for me, I don't see it like that at all. In fact, I look around me. I'm in New Zealand, right? I'm in Auckland, New Zealand, which is the sovereign and right of New Zealand, is a corporation that runs this. I would call it a dominion. I wouldn't even call it a country. It's not a nation, because it's not operating under common law. It's operating under maritime admiralty law, right? In regards to the systems that are held in place by people's acquiescing every day to that power, right? So this has to be such a drastic change, because what I see every day is people looking into their phones, scrying in their phones, immersed in the technology in a way that they've completely lost. They're going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the matrix. They've taken injectable procedures, mRNA injections that have changed their DNA, severed their connection to all that is, ever has been, and ever will be, which is first cause. They've severed their connection. They're dropping deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the matrix. Here in Auckland City, people are so deep in the matrix. Not everyone, but a lot of people are. I see around the world and talk to people who are traveling quite a lot at the moment, who tell me something. People even further into the matrix, going even further into the matrix. The dystopic digital AI, digital ID is coming into various places around the world. It's totalitarian tiptoes, David Icke says, towards that end game, towards that end goal. And yet people like these two people, I'm not going to mention their names on YouTube, who've got enormous followings. Together, I think both of them have got something close to 1 million followers on YouTube, right? Telling everybody how this wonderful, amazing experience of how 3i Atlas has come into the solar system, and how it's changing the nature of consciousness on this planet and in the solar system due to its approach towards the sun, and where it's come from, and how it's going to change consciousness and elevate us out of what we're experiencing right now. Meanwhile, genocide's happening in Palestine. Meanwhile, genocide's happening in southern Sudan. Meanwhile, genocide's happening in various parts of the world. Meanwhile, there's wars being fought. Meanwhile, people are starving to death. Meanwhile, people are deeply in the matrix. Meanwhile, I could go on and on and on. There are so many events, so many people within this control system who are so deeply asleep, as Gurdjieff, the teacher of the fourth way, would say, in regards to humanity being deeply asleep, unaware of their true nature, unaware of what they really are. And it would take a monumental shift in awareness for people to come out of the matrix, out of the deep sleep. People are moving quickly and silently and acquiescing towards a system of dystopic control. The awareness is there, but most people will give over their sovereignty, their security, their comfort to the system if they will be able to remain in that place of deep sleep. They like being ruled over. They don't want to take accountability for their own lives. They don't want to be responsible for their own creations. They don't want to grow up. They want to be parented by the system. And that's what these two people don't recognize and see, that most people want to be ruled over. They want to be ruled over, and the powers that be, the controlling force, knows that. And the dystopic AI, technocratic system, and digital IDs, digital currencies, tokenizing all assets, the new financial system, the financial collapse, everything that comes along in the next potentially, or even a third world war, NATO getting involved with starting a war with Russia, or Israel starting a war with the Middle Eastern countries, which bleeds out into the rest of the world. You know, I wrote a book called All Roads Lead to Party Haka in 2003. When I wrote that book in 2003, I had a very clear vision that a third world war, started out of the Middle East, and guess who started it? Not the people of Israel, but the hand that controls the Israeli government. The Sabbatean Frankists, as David Icke, it's brilliant work, has illuminated over the years. The Sabbatean Frankist cult, who moves through the controlling hand that controls Israel, starts a war in the Middle East, which spreads out over the entire world and creates a nuclear war, which takes out a large degree of the population of our planet, and also makes lots of the planetary surface unlivable due to the nature of what happens after a nuclear exchange on a global level. I don't want this to happen. Is it going to happen? It's a potential. Who knows? I don't. But every day we are in a situation where people are constantly giving their power away and acquiescing and allowing this to happen, all this to happen. And these two people had nothing to say about that at all. All they thought about was how wonderful, how amazing life was going to be, how excited they were about how life was, how life was moving towards, without taking into any kind of accountability in their video that they did together about the nature of where we're at realistically in the world, and how deeply asleep people are, and how quickly and easily they give over their power to authority or perceived authority. And they don't take personal accountability. They don't say, my experience at this time is this. They didn't use those words. My experience at this time, at this moment, is this. This is what I'm experiencing. It's a very different thing to say than saying that we as a collective consciousness are moving into a place that this is what's going to happen. The difference between their video, which they did together, these two people, which I'm not going to name, have a huge following. One of them is an astrologer. One of them is a geophysicist. You'll know who I'm talking about probably if you watch my videos. After I watched maybe half the video. I couldn't watch any more because it was so utterly ridiculous to me. The lack of ability to take into account what's really going on the ground in reality. Sure, there's many, many levels of existence happening all at once. People's awareness, people's perceptions, people how they choose to live their lives across the entire planet. But it looks nothing like that they're projecting out to the world. It looks nothing like that at all. Athen Chimenti, who I will mention, did a video on 3i Atlas, where he's interviewed about the nature of the 3i Atlas object moving into our solar system. And if you watch that video he did, I might even link it with this video here. If you watch it, he makes a much more boots on the ground appraisal of what this object could bring into our solar system, and what it could change consciousness. if people took accountability for that to happen, right? Very different than projecting out into the world the idea that we're heading towards this amazing utopic future. The powers that be have been in power for a long time, since the fall of Atlantis, are not going to go down without a fight. The ship will sink eventually, and this is not unfortunate, it's not fortunate, it is what it is. A lot of people who have acquiesced into that system will sink with that ship when it goes down. A lot of consciousness, which is, if you follow David Icke's work once again, is actually a holographic form. This physical body is a holographic form decoded into 3D reality from the fifth dimension via the fourth dimension. A lot of those bodies, a lot of those people, a lot of their awareness will be recycled. It will be recycled, and it will be sent back to source energy, or it will be recycled and taken into the eighth sphere, which I've said before, which is a mystery school work. Rudolf Steiner brought it to the fore back in the early 20th century, and talked about it. And with the incarnation, as he says, of Ahriman in our world in the 21st century, there is a lot of spiritual warfare to happen in the next few years, and it's still happening now. And the real war that is happening in this level of existence is a war for consciousness and for awareness. And most of the awareness within this field of simulation we call reality, most of it that I'm perceiving every day is not elevated out of it. It's not decoding infinity from its heart space. It's not open to decoding infinity from its heart space. It's deeply stuck in the matrix and getting deeper and deeper every day. Every day. And that is why I always come back to the book by Dev Misra, Yoga Shift, because what he said, what he's written about, what was 2-3 years ago, it's happening right now. The comet swarms. You read his book, and you read about the last part of the book where the Vedic astrologers at the end of the last ice age, the end of the golden age, were writing about the number of comets coming into the solar system, and into the inner solar system. If you read that, every comet had a name, it had a particular influence on the planetary consciousness and on the planetary surface, geophysically, etc., etc. You will see that when he wrote that book and about the nature of those comets, what are we having now in late 2025? We're having a comet swarm come into the solar system, the inner solar system. And this is how it begins. He wrote about that in the book, and it's there for you to look at. It's like it's a historical document, and he documents in the book the nature of what's going to happen as we move towards 2040. And as much as I want to perceive just a beautiful future, a beautiful utopic idea of HOPIUM, which is what these two individuals are selling, which is basically, to me, ethically and morally, it's wrong to project that out and say this is where we're heading towards. Your perception of your existence and your awareness, how it might live in that in this simulation, or it might exist beyond the simulation, but decode this its own experience, right, is very different to saying they were all heading towards us in the same direction. Most people aren't, and that's the fact of it. The lack of accountability. Say that I see my awareness moving towards a certain experience. See, for me, when I read the book Yoga Shift by Dev Misra, I recognized right away truth. Right away. And I know, for me and my perception, that truth has a historical precedent. It's all written down because the people that came before us, the awareness that came before us, recorded it all for us and gave us the play-by-play how it works within this simulation, right? They gave us that information. And sure, we can decode from outside the simulation, from the 5D, but my question then becomes, once again, I ask more questions than I have answers. My question then becomes, is the actual process of the yugas coming from the fifth dimension? Is this part of the part of the experience. And if G.G. Young says, this is something to leave you on, if G.G. Young's mystical esoteric Christianity knowledge says that we're living inside of a gigantic living being, then in some way for me, as we move towards 2040, that gigantic living being is about to have a bowel movement. That bowel movement means it's the end of this civilization as we know it. And everything within it, as Bippu Dev Misra's book says, and I totally feel this way too, will be gone. Everything about our civilization will be gone. Every component of this civilization will no longer be available to us. Because even though it's a tool, it's being utilized, most of the technology we have today within society is used for one reason only: control and manipulation of the population, of the awareness of the beings, of the decoding awareness that is in 3D, which is in bodies. It's all about control and tracking. And it's not, and as we move out of that system into one of virtue and honor, none of that technology has a place in that world. And that's why, as Bippu Dev Misra says in his book Yuga Shift, which I can't stress enough, why, in my perception, I'm kind of confused as to why these two people, this astrologer and this geophysicist, aren't talking to Bippu Dev Misra, because if they did, they'd get a very different picture of what they're perceiving in regards to how their blanket narrative push for a world we're heading into in the next couple of years would be, unfortunately, chopped off at the knees, and they'd be given a slice of realism to say that, hey, unfortunately, that might sound like it's a beautiful thing, and you might have something happen along those lines. Till at the end of that 15-year period of the very beginning of ekpyrosis, the age of transformation through fire, you might get something like that in 15 years. In fact, moving towards that as we enter into the period of 1200 years, 1200 years of transformation. That's how deep and how heavy this energy is around the control system of the falling from Atlantis, the fall of Atlantis, the end of the golden age, into the lower yuga cycles. That's how heavy it is, and that's how long it takes to transmute the energy as you're rising up out of it. 1200 years, not 18 months, mate. So that's how it's been. That's how it's going to be, in my perception. I'm not telling anyone else how it's going to be in regards to their experience of reality as such. For me, the book Yuga Shift is my Bible, because the information in that book has a historical precedent. Prima facie, it's got evidence, experiential, it's got empirical evidence of what happened before. And to me, that's where it's at. It has to be. I've gone from being crazy woo-woo when I was younger to being awareness, looking at reality, looking at my experience and going like, okay, what in my discernment makes sense to me? And what these two people said, this astrologer and this geophysicist said, was just absolutely comical and very irresponsible in my perception when you're talking about the nature of where you perceive the world going from when you're living in a very paradisical existence compared to most people on the planet, and you're forgetting, and you're also, with a great cognitive dissonance, you're not looking at the world really in the way it needs to be looked at, with a very fair and honest gaze. You're looking at the world through rose-tinted glasses. Thanks for watching. I truly appreciate it. Mā te wā. I'll see you again soon.